This is 2013's DateSugarYeastMagik, a collaboration I did with Pipeworks Brewing Company. It's a Belgian-style double brewed with dates and Demerara sugar. Clocking in at 9% ABV, I think it's probably held up. But let's bring in some pros to see if I'm right.
Drink it or dump it.
Pipeworks has come a long way since the days of home brewing. I'm excited to sit down with Beejay and Gerrit and JQ to talk about the creative process and the cross between brewing and music. I'm here at Pipeworks, although it doesn't look like it. We're in the red room.
Yeah.
Beejay and Gerrit from Pipeworks. JQ, the reason you're here and we're all here is because we did this event together, which I'll get into in a minute. First, Jay, talk about a little bit about what you're up to now and what you're doing to give some.
Sure. I guess it started, I was translating classic works of literature into hip hop musicals for the past 30 years. And that's led me in a lot of different directions.
That's kind of where we started working together was the Comedy of Errors.
You were in one of those shows.
That's right.
Yeah. And then I just started making music for kind of anything and everything, including dinners. Which I was just thinking about recently. I was telling somebody about, and I was thinking how far ahead of its time that was. Now you've got Parachute, Hi-Fi coming out, all these kinds of things that people are trying to make it more theatrical, the experience. So I just thought that was interesting. But most recently, I've been the composer for The Bear, which is also culinary and music for me.
Yeah,
right. So that kind of, I was kind of doing a favor for a friend, making a couple beats, and then it for the pilot episode, and then it kind of blew up like you never imagine it will.
That's amazing. Congrats.
Yeah. So now that's my job.
So between Gerrit and Beejay, just real quickly discuss how the dynamic of your roles together here at Pipeworks.
Sure. Well, I guess it's kind of fitting that we're doing this over Zoom because that's kind of how we started Pipeworks or most of the creative part of Pipeworks in early January through March of 2010, right? No, 2009. No, 2009. Thank you. I was trying to figure out how to say 2009. Yeah, 2009. Before Zoom, there was Skype, and we basically Skype.
Remember that?
Anywhere between 4 to maybe 12 hours a day, just, riffing off each other and ideas. And okay, what'd you do today at the brewery / ostrich farm? And then I was working on marketing plan and things like that. So
yeah, and I mean that was before. I mean, like literally, we came up with the name for Pipeworks, I believe, while I was on the farm. Right? We were like, jamming back and forth, trying to concept like what the brewery was gonna be. I mean, we still were like. Pipeworks was really in its gestation period at that point. My primary thing with Pipeworks right now is I'm 100% doing all of the label art and like any marketing artwork and things like that. So like I'm constantly working back and forth with our brew team and with Gerrit and making sure that we're making the outside of our beers as cool as the inside of the beers and letting people know this is cool stuff and making it visually pleasing as well as delicious.
We all came together with the supper club we did where I did dishes inspired by music, where I had songs, created dishes, and then we brewed beers in your kitchen. That's how long it's been to pair with the beers, and Jay came in with the music. I'm really curious about how your creative process, what is similar about it, right? Because you're taking a beer from an idea to a recipe to a liquid. Then Beejay, you need to come up with an artwork for it. Jay, are you taking the script? Are you watching the show and then scoring it? Like how do these worlds coincide and live in that same creative space?
I mean, I think we've made over 1,000 different packaged beers at this point over 10 plus years of brewing that. It's kind insane. Of we always make the joke the Simpsons did it. It's always Pipeworks did it because we've done so much stuff and and now there's 10,000 breweries in the country that have all done 1 million beers. So I think the thing is you can't force something, there's a lot of ideas that are low hanging fruit, before that you could grab and be like, oh, why hasn't someone done this before? But now it's, things just kind of have to be natural. And if you do have an idea that doesn't fit what you're doing now, you can bank that idea, and maybe a year from now or 5 years from now, you can still pull from that idea and still use it. But but that's been the biggest difference between now and before is, not trying to force any ideas, whether it be a name, a recipe concept, or art concept. And BJ can expand upon this more because he's the one that has to kind of do a lot of that. So
I think also, like, I mean, Gerrit touched on this. I mean, there's a difficulty now too, because we have, 10,000 breweries, and a lot of us are, we're not breweries that are putting out like 2 flagship beers that we just brew. It's not, we're making like Brand A and Brand A Light. We're all coming out with, I mean, like, I think last year, me alone, I did like 60 labels last year. And those were new products, along with anything that we like had flagship and came out with like repeat products. I mean, we still do bring stuff out of the vault. So all these breweries coming up with all these ideas, sometimes you have these brainstorm ideas that you're like, oh, dude, I got this great idea. And then you like go on Untapped and you're like, yeah, and so did 20 other people.
Right.
So I think that is a huge challenge in the creative space today, is that you get shut down out of ideas that you might get excited about because they're just not, available to you anymore.
Can you relate to that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd say the major difference that is that you are working on something that is the final product. Like, you're selling that product. Like, I'm in support of another product, at least in my current job. And so, I have like I can't be precious at all, right? And if somebody's just like, nope, I'm like, okay, next idea. Nope, next idea. And also you have to stay open to how it happens. And I'm sure this is probably a similarity. Sometimes I'll have an idea and I'll be like, this, I read through the season, the music to me, the vibe of the room sounds like this to me. And they'll go, we agree. And they'll actually cut to it. And so it happens in reverse. Sometimes then I'll score a picture. Other times there is for instance, there was an REM song they used, right? And they're like, we want to use it, but we want to like you to mess with it. So I got to legally sample REM, which is insane.
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, and chop it up. So I'm taking somebody else's idea and sort of mosaicing it. And so it kind of happens always. And you can't, for us, like for me and, Ig, who do a lot of the scoring, it's like, you cannot be precious. Huh?
Well, I think there's some overlap there because when it was just BJ and I and Scott, our third partner here, we could make all the decisions. But now we have a crew of about 20 people, and there can be some ideas that don't resonate, or as BJ was saying, it's not what the brewer that came up with the beer idea wanted. So BJ now, very much more so than before, is very can be detached and not precious about something that he's worked on, because he knows he can then bank that idea and find another spot for it. But BJ can spend all these hours on something he loves, and then the people we're pitching it to that work here that we're like, hey, you guys excited about this? Like, we don't like that at all. And then so BJ knows he has to very quickly go to plan B, C, which can be very frustrating. And we are in a bit of a time crunch here because beer is perishable. And so we only have such a window between when we concept the beer, it's in the fermenter, it's brewing, now it's getting packaged, and we need the label to be printed in-house for us to do it. So we've actually
manufacturing.
Exactly. And so that's part that's it's a lot changed.
It moves surprisingly fast. It's probably one of my biggest complaints that I'm like, sometimes the brewers are like, oh, we just put a new beer in the tank today. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I was like, so what are we doing? It's going to be a beer. It's got some like lemons in it and stuff. I'm like, oh, cool. I got 3 weeks to, have a label at the dock. Neat. Like, so when someone comes to me and they're like, I want this, 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 and this, I'm like, it narrows it down for me. And I'm like, great. That's exactly. But sometimes when it's just like ephemeral, it's just like, hey, we got a new beer. I don't really have any ideas. Let's like do something. I'm like, I'm like,
Oh yeah,
it's
that's
like the
the
artist's
worst,
greatest
right?
fear. You gave me a blank canvas. I'm like,
Yeah.
artists hate blank canvases. Like,
No, that's
scary.
like that is paralyzing,
But
right?
I think
Yeah,
from,
right.
Say it's like, well, and when you're working with friends, your best
Mhm.
friends, and you have so much history, there at some point you release an idea of like, well, if my idea is not in there, then I'm gonna be lost in this
Yeah.
process. But you have to understand that like your idea, even if it's thrown out, and then the next idea is the one that thrives, and it was not yours. Your idea helped
Well, I
us
always say
come to that.
you know
Right?
it's like when you loosen the jar, you hand it to the next guy.
Yeah, well, I
And they
yeah,
open
yeah,
it.
like,
It's
oh,
like,
right,
yeah.
Speaking of collaboration, I brought an oldie but a goodie here. This is Date Sugar Yeast Magic. So I before I even get to the beer, I want to talk about how this all came about because Jay, you mentioned the magic of the way we put this thing together and whether it was ahead of its time. What are your memories of the process? And what are your memories of the event? And you're still talking about it today. We had to have done this, what, 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
Well, it just feels like a fresh idea to me now.
Yeah.
I remember trying the beers and just being like, God damn, the quality of these beers was levels above anyone else that I had tried that was on the indie tip trying to make it happen. It's just like way more interesting and just mouthfeel, flavors, everything was so much better, you know.
I'll never forget when I was at City Provisions, I started doing beer collaborations. Someone was like, "There's these two guys doing this underground beer club.
Sure.
You got to get a hold of it." And I felt the same way when I tried your beer for the first time, and I looked around for I could not find the menu from that night. I could not find the beers
Oh,
from
I
that
definitely
night.
have one in a box somewhere, I'm sure.
It was magical. And
Do you remember what we drank this with?
this
Was the
I-
final?
This wasn't at the dinner.
this was
at-
after
no,
the
okay.
dinner.
Yeah.
No, I remember. Okay, so I remember one course.
Yeah.
I remember dessert was
Remember dessert.
bananas.
Okay.
I remember you made some sort
Oh,
of
yeah.
banana flambe thing,
Uh-huh.
right? And it
I
was
also-
Nina Simone's I Want a Little Sugar in My
Oh, I
Blood.
remember Nina Simone.
And then you
Yeah.
all had a porter.
I think it was Abduction. I think Russian Imperial Stout, I think.
Oh, stout. Yeah, stout. And it had fenugreek in it.
Oh, that'd be Last Kiss then.
Okay, Last Kiss.
Last
I
Kiss,
remember
yeah.
because it tasted like
Yeah.
bad log
Yeah.
cabin syrup a little
Yeah.
bit. You know, that kind of
It's a
Yeah,
maple.
it's a
Gotcha.
super
The
overly
overdose.
maple.
Yeah, the fake maple, you know, like and
Yeah.
and I remember that because I tasted it and I was like, this is fenugreek. I know this. And
Sure.
sure enough, you guys are like, it tastes like maple syrup. That's actually fenugreek.
Yeah.
I was like, yes.
I love the label. I remember, and I have a picture of this. We were all sitting around pitting boxes of Medjool dates. And it was such a pain in the ass. We were sitting on like milk crate
Sure.
in the brewery.
God, I
Beejay-
remember so many days sitting on milk crates doing stuff like that.
Right. Talk about this label.
I mean, anyone that's like a 90s, 2000s Red Hot Chili Peppers fan, I think will like quickly get the reference both in the name and the label. But yeah, like clearly a riff on the Blood Sugar Sex Magic album cover.
So what do you think it's going to taste like?
Well, so a Belgian beer like this could definitely hold up. Depends on if you kept it in like the dashboard of your car where sun's beating down on it every day. And
I did not.
or if it was in the back of a closet. Well, there's a little bubbles there and there was a little hiss.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was like, I don't know.
So it's definitely probably a lot of sediment. So we want to, probably pour it gently.
Gentle pour.
Gentle pour. So you probably have the tastiest one there because you got the top, and then it'll just get more sediment as we go down. Yeah, sure enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember drinking some of those like old Belgian beers when we were working at West Lakeview, and they would just be like just mud for like the bottom.
Chunky.
We were just like drinking
Be
it
like
down.
a little strainer. Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So,
BJ, cheers.
cheers.
Cheers with my bubble water.
Yep, it tastes like 12-year-old beer.
Would you rate it a drink it or a dump it?
It depends on how thirsty you are. So,
Desert Island.
Drink it. Yeah.
You also have to remember, I do want to tell all the viewers at home that this beer was bottled on a bottling line that was I built with my hands, and I am no great engineer. Like literally, this was built out of like parts from a homebrew shop. Like every beer that was bottled, well, maybe this was pre-Maheen, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we did eventually get a Maheen, which is still like, you know, not the riskiest of bottling lines, but yeah, this was like packaged in a pretty homebrewy way, despite our, you know, being a real official brewery. So it's funny that this is the beer that you picked for today, because like literally I was like, I was going through an old hard drive just like a week ago or so, and I was like looking through like a bunch of old artwork that I had done for like, you know, old Pipeworks in our first location. And like I came upon that label and it like really brought a smile to my face. Because I remember making that artwork and I was like, I was listening to the new Red Hot Chili Peppers album recently, and I was like, yeah, I was just like, oh God, I remember that. That was really like it like, you know, tickled my memory cells a little bit. And I was like, oh, that was cool. I liked that project. It was so close, like it seemed so right, like blood sugar yeast magic, because it was like feeding into the like you know, music collaboration that Cleetus was into, and like there were four, like everything like just wanted to make that like parody for me, you know, like I was like, oh, I was really excited about it. But I do remember doing that artwork and being like, I don't know, like maybe we're gonna get in trouble.
What was the one beer that you tasted that changed everything for you? How long ago was it? Do you remember where you were, Gerrit? What was that beer for you?
You put me. I thought you were gonna go Beejay first there.
All right, Beejay.
Yeah, I actually got that really easy. I think for me, I remember, so like before I got into craft beer, like I was in college and I was like, you know, drinking Heineken, thinking I was drinking the fancy stuff, right? And I was living with my friend Bjorn, who's a chef, and he had brought up to me that like, you know, we could homebrew beer, and that was actually the start of like all of this for me. Was like when we like, you know, our first bucket full of sugar mix that we fermented. But I didn't really know anything about craft beer at that juncture. And so he took me to Whole Foods, and like I was like, oh wow, look at all these different like beers. And at the time, like Whole Foods was the place where you could actually find some like a decent spread of microbrews. And I actually like specifically remember we got a 6-pack of Alpha King from Three Floyds. I think we got that, and maybe I think it was still when Bell's was in town. We might have got some like Two Hearted Ale, or maybe maybe it was Two Hearted. But yeah, it was the Alpha King. I remember we got home and like I had never tasted like what a American hoppy IPA was up until that juncture, and I remember tasting that beer and just being like, what, like, oh my God, these flavors are insane. And that like really, that sparked a lot in my brain about like a change in perception of what beer was. And that really like was like the rim of the rabbit hole where I was like, oh, what's down there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was an Alpha King. I really remember that day.
Now. Nice. Yeah. You remember?
Yeah, it probably wasn't one beer. It's probably a lot of beers, but I guess one story would be I think sophomore year of college, possibly. You know, some people had some fake IDs, you know, things happen here. But I remember going to Benny's, and because we went to Loyola Rogers Park, where we just had like, you know, the little corner stores that had like a selection of 5 different beers. I remember the first time I went to a Benny's and saw at this time they had maybe 100 different beers on it, you know, not like they do today where they have thousands of beers, but you know, they just stuff that I'd never seen before.
Pretty nice wall, yeah.
And it was all pretty expensive stuff too. But I remember finding like a bomber or a 750 of a St. Bernardus 12, I think. And I was like, oh, I'm going to buy this one. It was like $12. You know, this is 20 something years ago. And I remember bringing it to like a house party that night, like a kegger party. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to open up my cool fancy beer and see if anyone wants it. And no one wanted it. So I remember just choking that down because I don't think I liked it.
10% like double.
But by the time I was finished drinking it, I really liked it. And I was like, you know, it's also like 12% alcohol.
Yeah, exactly.
So when I could afford it once a week, I'd go back to the Benny's and buy something expensive and weird, and you know, Three Floyds, and
All right. That's awesome. Was there a beer for you?
I think, you know, like for me, like even musically, I used to like try too hard and do too much. and I've like gotten to like a place where like I'm really direct, and there's less of translation between what's in my brain and what my hands do. There's like almost no translation there, and I can make exactly what's in my head now, which is cool. And when you get to that level, you find simplicity in that. And so for me, the beer that like I think of as beer is like sitting when I lived on the West Coast, sitting in Santa Monica, drinking a Reisdorf Kolsch, just a Kolsch beer, just like in the skinny glass, and just like I was like, this should be fucking beer in the dictionary, you know, like this is so perfect and crispy, and I just love the simplicity of it.
Love it, love it, awesome. Well, listen.
Wait, what about you, Cleetus?
Oh, me?
Yeah, come on.
Your beer.
My beer was actually. Thank you for you three for not just being in my life, but being here today and talking about the creative process. It's fantastic. And let this be an excuse for us to get together and do something again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And really bring the spotlight back into the beautiful world of craft beer.
I think it's a drink it.
Cheers.
Cheers to
It's
that.
great to me.
It's a drink
I
it.
like it. It's a drink it.
This is
Barely a drink it. But
I love that. Like that's the
You're gonna have to
outtake,
leave
man.
that.
It's like, yeah,
almost like dog food. Not that anyone's eating dog food, but
well, I mean,
it's got that dog food. You smell dog food, so it tastes like what you smell when you smell dry dog food.
Sounds yummy, man. I wish I was there, guys.